Live with Dr. Hilla. I hope everyone enjoyed the Memorial Day weekend with their family and friends. We must never let our kids forget what Memorial Day is truly about. I also want to clarify that I am not an attorney. My doctoral degree focuses on law, particularly dealing with legislation and public policy rather than legal cases or judicial processes. While I have some experience reviewing Supreme Court cases, my specialty lies in construction, public policy, legislation, zoning, regulations, urban development, affordable housing, and financing. Now, for any questions pertaining to judicial processes or specific areas, I will do my best to provide answers based on my opinion, or I will let you know if I am uncertain and will research the questions to cover in in a future episode of Patriots Corner. Also, after each segment, I will pause and see if there's any comments and take answer the comments or take questions. Now, for my first segment on legal analysis, as for the questions I've heard about why the Trump administration is appealing only the nationwide injunctions concerning the Birthright Citizenship executive order, it seems that the four lower district courts haven't ruled on the actual constitutionality of the EO. They have only issued an emergency stay, more commonly known as a nationwide injunction. So once the EO makes it through the four lower courts and then the federal appellate courts, I am sure we will hear about it at the Supreme Court level sometime around probably the end of this year or the beginning of next. Furthermore, the left has been shopping for judges and targeting nearly every executive order that President Trump has signed since January the 20th. So it would make no sense for him not to do, but suggest it is more logical to focus on issues affecting the implementation of most of his policies rather than determining what the Supreme Court considers regarding the constitutionality of a single executive order. So even if he could get the Supreme Court to break over 200 years of presidents, it would still make more sense to get the Supreme Court to rein in the federal district courts, ruling that nationwide injunctions are unconstitutional and outside of their powers. On my TikTok live the other day, I also had a guest who argued that nationwide injunctions are not new, when actually, according to congressional records, historical analysts communicators generally agree that nationwide injunctions were not issued in the Republic's early years and that such injunctions have been more common in the last 2 decades. Now, here's an excerpt from the Supreme Court transcript that explains the basis of the Trump team's argument that nationwide injunctions are an abuse of power. This is a bipartisan problem that has now spanned the last 5 presidential administrations. Universal injunctions exceed the judicial power granted in Article 3, which exists only to address the injury to the complaining party. And then it also goes on to the fact that the Supreme Court has shown a reluctance to allow litigants to assert the rights of the third parties because these parties may not need to wish to assert those rights, and courts prefer to avoid unnecessary decisions on constitutional issues. All right. So also, nationwide injunctions enable challengers to bypass requirements for bringing a class action or fast track appeals, forcing the federal courts to evaluate challenged policy based on a limited factual and legal record. While there are many arguments supporting against nationwide injunction, it is now up to the Supreme Court to make that decision, and we'll soon see if they set a precedent either way. Now, if I have anybody in here, it looks like I've got 2 people total, one on locals, one on that, but I don't see anybody in chat. Actually, let me put it on all so it's not on private. Sorry about that. So if anybody else comes in, just grab me a little drink and then I'll get on to the second segment today, which go over the kind of the budget and the bill, which will be a short kind of section because of the fact that we're still waiting on the bill to fully come out. So in segment 2, Congress has made noteworthy strides in advancing a significant portion of President Trump's policies, initiatives, and campaign commitments. However, there remains considerable work ahead. The proposed bill must now proceed through the Senate, where it is expected to undergo changes that will differ from the version passed by Congress. We're not going to see the same version. There's no way. So as a result, it will need to be reviewed by a joint committee before returning to both houses for additional voting prior to reaching President Trump's desk for his signature. Given that the bill currently spans nearly 1,000 pages, a complete review of all amendments I would be pointless at this time, which I will do it that once they finally have the joint resolution passed, and then I'll do a live over that. The proposed bill also is associated with an increase in national debt, and some projections indicate that it could lead to a higher deficit. However, it is important to take into account potential economic growth, the revenue generated from reabsorbing, reshoring production, and other influencing factors that are often overlooked, which is what the Trump administration is counting on. The perspective aligns with the approach of President Trump's administration, which poised that it is possible to achieve a balanced budget through enhancements in GDP and by providing additional disposable income to American consumers. In contrast, the opposing viewpoint suggests that raising taxes and government spending is the necessary issue. The problem with those two evils is you can't just keep increasing taxes and increasing spending, increasing taxes, increase spending. It's funny how the left wants to come out and complain about Trump increasing the deficit or the budget, the bill or budget, but yeah, that's all the Democrats have done. They're first, I mean, President Biden did 7 trillion, I think, is nowhere way over this 3 trillion. And this is just literally for all of 2025. Once we actually do appropriations bills and we can realize the cuts from Doge, that will be a different story. And now that Doge, as of today, this is not within my script, kind of going off script here, but as of today, Trump finally got a win at the federal court level when a judge reversed the decision stopping Doge from getting access to the Treasury payments. Now, with that ability, hopefully Doge will actually start being able to trace where all this fraud is going, because now they'll actually have access to the Treasury payment system to figure out where all this money went. And then we can actually save that money. It's obviously, if they save $1 trillion or $2 trillion, it's not in 1 year, it's over like a 5 or 10 year period. But we'll just have to see how that goes. Now, also, ultimately, we got to think that neither political party appears willing to tackle the complex and politically sensitive challenge of achieving a balanced budget. I mean, while Trump cut taxes, he also cut spending in areas. So we'll see if the economic agenda works. If not, then we'll have to come together and do a smart but unpopular thing and probably cut 1,000 in spending for every 25 in tax increases. We're going to have to cut. We haven't had a balanced budget since Bill Clinton. It was the last time we had a balanced budget. And honestly, if you ran Bill Clinton today for a presidency, he'd probably have to run for a Republican, because he did everything that Trump's doing. He cut over 400,000 jobs and the government, downsizing it. He deported illegal immigrants, millions of them. He was strict on border policy. I mean, he literally is doing what Trump did, other than he actually balanced the budget, cut Medicaid, cut Social Security, increased the age of Social Security from 60 to 65, or 62 to 65 last time it happened. So, and yet, but today, that you're one to throw grandma off a cliff if you do that. It makes no sense at all. I'm still not seeing, it doesn't show me any comments or any questions in here. I don't know if it says that they're there. I just don't see anybody on it. So I guess I'll go ahead and go on to the segment 3, going over tariffs and the economy. And as recently, President Trump this last week signed 4 executive orders aimed at job creation, economic growth, and strengthening our infrastructure. The first executive order, deploying advanced nuclear reactor technologies for national security, includes creating plans to install advanced nuclear reactors at all military bases and Department of Energy facilities, reducing congressional and environmental red tape, promoting American nuclear exports, and prioritizing nuclear clearances. The second executive order involves reforming and modernizing the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is literally the best green energy we have right now. It's the most effective green energy we have. Form of green energy we can have right now is nuclear energy. It will be what we need to get us through AI. And these executive orders, that's the whole point, is to keep us at the forefront of AI and not have blackouts or brownouts and anything like that. So these are some historic executive orders, and we'll see how much actually gets done before the end of President Trump's term. Now, the third executive order is about reinvigorating the nuclear industrial base so that America can add to its nuclear capacity at the same rate as other developing nations, instead of taking 40 years versus on other nations' average of 10 years. It takes us 40 years to do what they do in 10. So that the government can actually provide affordable, reliable, safe, and secure energy to the American people to power advanced nuclear reactor technologies and build associated supply chains that secure our global industrial and digital dominance, achieve our energy independence, protect our national security, and maximize the efficiency and effectiveness of nuclear fuel through recycling, reprocessing, and reinvigorating the commercial sector. These initiatives aim to enhance national security, ensure that the United States remains a leader in artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies by developing an electrical infrastructure capable of supporting these innovations. Now, an effort of this magnitude should be a bipartisan issue and garner support from both sides of the aisle. But as we know, the left prioritizes blocking Trump's successes over doing what's best for the American people or the American economy. So it is important to consider sunk. Also, when it comes to tariffs, it is important to consider sunk costs when evaluating tariffs. As a portion of these tariffs may be classified as sunk costs, this means they should be disregarded in the overall assessment of business expenses as they represent costs that have already been incurred and cannot be recovered. So you won't see so any economist who is out there saying all prices will increase, they're not being honest, and it's coming from a biased perspective. They are yelling fire when there's no fire there. Well, prices rise some, yes, but if we had increased the taxes, the same would have happened. Whether we increase it through taxes or whether we increase it through t- um, uh, tariffs, either way, it's going to increase the cost to consumers. Now, obviously, when you get in economics, you talk about sunk costs, and the minute I'm also here about to talk about price elasticity of demand. So out there saying all those prices, like I said, that's being coming from a biased perspective. Now, in markets with few substitutes, demands tend to be less elastic, which allows producers to raise prices more easily. Conversely, when there are many substitutes available, demand is more elastic, giving consumers the ability to switch to alternative products if prices increase significantly. Therefore, understanding cross price elasticity of demand can provide insight into actual market dynamics and pricing power. And that's where they're being dishonest, is they're not actually going into those effects. They're not covering any of that product stuff, which means they're not they just think they expect everybody to believe what they say because it aligns with those people's beliefs, and they will go out there and parrot whatever that person says. But right now, if I mean, according to these so-called economists, we should be in a recession right now. We should be going down the drain, but yet consumer confidence just kind of jumped 12.3 points to 98%. Um, confidence of income and job jumped 17.4, 17.8%. So all the economic numbers are defying what the left is saying. And anytime, as we're starting to see more and more trade deals come, and at least these trade people being willing to come to the table to do trade deals, we're starting to see the stock market recovering. So this has nothing to do with that other than the fact that they like to sit there and push something because they want power. All they care about is power and control. All right. If they truly cared about anything, they would go back more to the center, because the reality is the left and right are not that far apart on ideology. And throughout the majority of America, the majority of people, we all want the same thing. We just have a little different ideas how to get there. It's the far left that is progressives that have taken over the Democratic Party, taken over the leadership, and that are pushing it off of a cliff. They're running off the deep end because they care more about, they say that they want equality, but they push division through critical race theory and DEI, which is not about equality. It's about division, because sitting there and trying to make kids today that were not alive whenever there was segregation or slaves, trying to make them feel like they did something wrong when they haven't, and then sitting there and trying to make all of the black Americans feel like they're victims, that they can't get anywhere without help and that they need the government's help. That's literally racism and division. If we start judging people by the content of their character and not the color of their skin, we can actually get away from we can start eliminating racism and bigotry. Racism and bigotry is not just based off of ignorance, it's based off of people pushing stuff. When somebody sits there and tries to blame you for something you didn't do, you had nothing to do with, or wants you to pay for something you didn't do, then that just drives people more apart. If we go back to judging people straightly off of merit, off of what they can do, who they are, how they do stuff, we can actually have a chance of getting back together. Honestly, I feel like this country was less divided among race and everything back when I was in high school in the 90s than it is now in the 2000s, because the Democratic Party knows that they're starting to lose the educated black voters, the educated Hispanic voters. So the more that all they're trying to divide to keep more votes. And now they're also trying to bring in massive numbers of legal immigrants so they can buy more votes. And everybody goes, "Oh, legal immigrants don't vote." And I'll get to this here in a minute, but and how this happens. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is a kind of a good segue into my fourth segment, which is about immigration and border security. That I wanted to cover a subject I've had keep coming up in my lives on TikTok, and that is Democrats arguing that illegal immigrants can pay taxes, and that is another reason why we should allow them to stay. While illegal immigrants can apply for what's called an ITIN, it also doesn't give them the ability to work. So any state that requires e-verifier and a social security number to work, the ITIN doesn't do anything. It doesn't qualify you for Social Security benefits or the Earned Income Tax Credit or the Child Tax Credit or change immigration status, authorize you to work in the U.S., or serve as an identification outside of the federal tax system. It was initially meant for non resident alien students, professors, and researchers filing a U.S. federal tax return or claiming an exemption. Now, here's the thing there is with this ITIN, you have states like California and Washington and other ones that allow illegal immigrants to get IDs. Almost every state, when you go get your ID, they ask you if you want to register to vote. Now, everybody goes, "Oh," when I put a post up yesterday about Texas made it clarified that only citizens can vote in elections, and they're like, "That was already a law." That was a constitutional. That was part of the constitutionally federal lies, but it's statewide they have the ability to allow it. Now the problem is when you go to register to vote on your driver's license, it doesn't say register to vote at state, local, and state or federal. It just says register to vote, and most states do not separate your local from your federal. All right, so that's how easily illegal immigrants could vote on the federal level because they're already registered to vote on the local level and they're on the same ticket. If they go to vote in local elections, all they got to do is mark the federal election at the top of it, or they just click direct Democrat. So that's the problem with that. And if they have an ITIN that some states treat like regular social security numbers, even though it's not, so they can work a job and stuff, even though if they actually used E-Verify, they would know, then there wouldn't be that loophole. So if the ITIN was never meant for illegal immigrants to use while they were here to be able to pay taxes or get a job. It was meant for people who were, like I said, students, professors, or researchers that were here or working here, but on a short-term status and were not long-term or have work permit. So if there's a loophole there, there's obviously the loophole in the voting. And if states aren't giving you information on how that person approved to get their ID, whether it was through Social Security or whatever, if they didn't have the new IDs that everybody's supposed to be required to have, then how can you prove that they were legal or not illegal when they voted? It's not hard. So hopefully now that the Republicans control both houses of Congress and the presidency, we can pass legislation that closes this loophole and allows CBP to review all W-7 applications for ITINs. This review will ensure that all applicants meet the requirements originally set out in the legislation rather than allowing illegal immigrants who were unlawfully here to exploit states that do not use E-Verify to evade immigration enforcement and deportation. All right, so that's what we need to do. We need to close these loopholes so they cannot use it to their advantage. Additionally, I wouldn't be surprised if states like California treat ITIN as a social security, allowing it to function as a second form of ID to obtain a driver's license and register to vote, which is why the citizenship to vote law Texas passed is so important. Because when you register to vote, most states, as I said a minute ago, don't separate state from federal voter registration. So yes, voting federal, it says in the Constitution that only U.S. citizens can vote. All right. But it also says states can make their own rules and regulations as it obtains to voting. So there's no way to control the two different points there. So that is what we need to happen is we need to get this W-7 cleaned up. Also, the CBP and I should be able to get the W-7s, all W-7s from IRS to verify that the person is who they say they are and that they are here legally, that they're using the ITIN number as a legal form that it was meant to be until we can get legislation by Congress passed to close that loophole. All right, because that it's who cares if they're paying taxes or not? They're here illegally, period. We just had a here in Texas, you haven't seen on the national news because it was a black girl killed, but it was by a Venezuelan migrant. It wasn't by a white guy or a cop. So obviously, only local news plays it. You don't see on national news. But she was a cadet about to start basic and go to the Air Force Academy, and she was down here visiting her family Memorial's Day, out kayaking on Grapevine Lake when a two illegal migrants from Venezuela were on a jet ski driving too close to shore, not paying attention, and literally ran her over and killed her right there. Did the girl stop and help? No. Her friend was blocked from getting away. The driver got away fast enough, jumped in the car with her friend or boyfriend or brother, whoever he was, a guy. They drove off, hit two cars on their way out, and luckily, between all the videos and everything, they were able to find the two people and get them into custody. But if the and go what? Guess what? They got here in 2023 under Joe Biden's catch and release program. Were caught at the border, and then they were released on their own recognizance with a date to turn in. Supposed to have um, a tracker, and then turn in for the court date. If they had been turned around at the border and deported like they should have been, those two girls would not have been here, and that woman that was in the kayak probably would still be here. Now, obviously, there's no if it was her time, it could have been her time. Who knows? But we do know that if those two girls hadn't been here and that guy that are here illegally, there's a good chance it would not have happened. So that is why we have got to get it done. I mean, it is ridiculous. And that's President Trump was elected because this by over 50% of the American people to secure our southern border and deport the millions of criminal illegal immigrants who who entered the interior of the United States during the last 4 years under Biden. If Democrats don't want what they consider innocent illegal immigrants and immigrant families to get caught up in the raids, then stop doing sanctuary cities. They need to instruct their cities, counties, and states to collaborate with ICE, Border Patrol, and CBP agents so that these officials don't have to go into the community alone. This would help ensure that non-criminal legal immigrants are not caught up in the initial raids, that they can self-deport or whatever. And the funny thing is even Bill Clinton and Barack Obama deported illegal immigrants in mass numbers, but you never saw the media covering it or attacking them for it, or the left becoming hysterical, claiming a humanitarian crisis. Actually, Obama ran against Bush as not being hard enough on the border and allowing in too many illegal immigrants. That was a Democrat telling a Republican that back in 2008. I mean, that's insane. In 2008, the Democrats are telling Republicans, we're not being hard enough on securing the border, deporting illegal immigrants, that we're allowing them in here for free labor. Now they want them for free votes. Isn't it kind of funny how about every 10 to 20 years, the immigration fact changes? One party's allowing it to not happen for another reason, which is why we need to do immigration reform that only leaves one thing open to the president that's in power, and that is to control the visas and the immigration or asylum seeking part. As far as illegal immigrants at the border and illegal immigrants crossing, that needs to be controlled at the congressional level. It needs to be a strict law that there is no catch and release. Anybody who comes over that border who is not here illegally, who does not have a asylum claim or a claim for asylum, fear, or refugee, they are sent back to their home country. They are automatically deported. All right. And then if they try to come back, it's a felony. But we also need to make our system better where it's easier for them to get over here. We also need to get rid of birthright citizenship. So you don't have these drug cartels out there telling these women, hey, if you get into America, if you just fall over the border and then have a baby, that'll get you your citizenship because your son will be a citizen. So they'll let you stay with him. when that's not really the truth, but that's what they'll tell them to get their $10,000, $20,000 or pesos or whatever to get them there. And they're risking life and limb to get here, which is more dangerous than them having to stay at home while they come here legally, while they go through the process like all the other legal immigrants who came here legally. We can discuss and agree or disagree on stuff of how we can get what we can do with the illegal immigrants who are already here who have not broken any laws. But first, we need to get all the ones that have been here under 2 years out, and all the ones who have broken laws other than coming across the border out. Because anybody under 2 years qualifies for expedited removal, and the other people that have broken their laws, so they would be removed anyways due to the fact they have ruined their chance of getting American citizenship or being here. Then anybody who is brought here of that was brought here of no fault of their own or has been here for over 5-10 years, then we can talk something about that. We can talk about an amnesty program or a path to citizenship for them. Now, for Section 5, I want to cover some breaking news and news updates for local for here for Texas. I already talked about over this weekend the tragedy that happened at Grapevine Lake. That I pretty much already went over this and how it was two Venezuelans who entered the country during Biden's catch and release program, and how the left is ignoring it because it was a black girl killed by illegal immigrants, not by white people or cops. Other than that, there would be protests and riots going on. And that's the crazy thing is Democrats only want to go after it whenever it meets their agenda. Again, they literally pimp out their people is to make money off of them, to get their stories off of them, not because they care, because they want power and control. That's all it is. They want power and control. That matters nothing else to them. All right. Now, the Texas state government only meets every 2 years. We're a bicameral Congress. And this year was the 89th legislative session. Multiple major education and tax bills were presented in the House and Senate. While not all of them made it to the governor's desk, we saw a historic increase in the school budget, reaching $8.5 billion, with $4.2 billion allocated for teacher and staff pay raises, including cost for special education and pre-K, which puts the Texas school system on track to be the best in the country, and it was 4 times higher than usual. Additionally, another bill requiring schools to display a copy of the 10 Commandments in every classroom also passed. Now, some may ask, will that not violate the separation of church and state? Well, the legislation was written based on a recent Supreme Court ruling on a Louisiana bill that was trying to pass to deal with this, which is to say, and what the ruling was is that if the schools or the government doesn't pay for it and it's donated, then it's allowed there. So what they did is the law states that they have to hang them up if somebody donates them. They have to be willing to hang up the 10 Commandments in the classroom, every classroom, as long as it's donated. Additionally, Texas passed another bill that bans all diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in Texas and removing critical race theory, which was never really in here anyways. And then 2 of the most important bills that Governor Greg Abbott signed involved raising the homestead exemption to the first $140,000 for all homeowners and $200,000 for those who are disabled over 65. Property taxes are part of the Texas Constitution, so we will have to vote in November to approve or not approve these changes. Now, Senate Bill 870 allows school marshals to open carry a handgun instead of concealed carry if they have a uniform, along with establishing a school voucher program, one of the largest in the U.S., and a constitutional amendment protecting the rights of parents to raise their children how they want, versus leaving it up to the schools to have their ability. There is no more of this. It's all about parental rights in Texas, and we're getting rid of that. There is a couple other bills I haven't been able to see for sure if they fully passed or not. One that had to do with getting anything to do with transgenderism or any stuff like that out of the libraries at the city and the state level. All the crazy stuff they were teaching them. So that's supposed to be done. I'm not 100% sure if they made it out. And then I guess we had a big attack again from cartels. Went after, I guess, some Marines in Mexico. So I have a feeling we're going to be going after them a lot. Schumer got roasted. And then that's pretty much what's going on today, other than, Trump finally, the federal a federal judge finally gave President Trump that win. Now, hopefully, here in another week or so, we will hear about what's going on with the case for the federal the case on the federal nationwide injunctions on whether it's constitutional or not, and shouldn't be more in probably the second week of June since they took something that was totally out of their calendar and they usually were already in that time anyways. We'll see what happens. And also, there was a big decision on a first speech, free speech right, where the Supreme Court didn't take a case up. It was a kid that had worn a shirt that said two genders only to school, and they said that he couldn't wear it. So like 2 weeks later, he put a piece of tape over the two only and put censored, and it just said genders only instead of two genders only. Said censored, and that, and then they kicked him out of school again for it because they said, oh, it threatened or made them feel not right or something. So, I mean, this is the crazy stuff we got to deal with. And this is the left's hypocrisy. They they only like free speech whenever it agrees with what they want. That's the only time they like free speech. If it has to do with anything else that they're against, oh, then they attack and they start fights and arguments, and they never want to actually, they don't want to debate you on actual constructive policy ideas. They just want to call you names and shut you down. They don't want to listen to your ideas. No matter what you tell them, you're always wrong. You're always a liar. It has gotten ridiculous. All right. I've met a few Democrats still out here that I can actually sit there and have a intelligent conversation with for longer than 20, 30 minutes without them just going off the deep end. I mean, it's insane. It's crazy. And most of them aren't even that intelligent or that intellectual. They don't even understand anything about the economy or economics or understand anything about what they're being told. They just believe what they're being told. And another thing is they sit there and talk about, oh, Trump said this and Trump said that. No, he didn't, or no, it, and not in the context that you're believing it was. Problem is he loves to just say a lot of stuff, and he likes to take attack, get the cameras, and just snipe at the media and everything like that. So they'll sit there and he'll say something, but in a smart aleck remark or in a certain context. And what they'll do is they'll cut off every bit of that speech except for the 1 or 2, 3, 5 seconds of what he said and go, oh, see, he did say it. But in reality, he was going, oh, so you blah, blah, blah. You want to ask me that? You think, oh, you're saying I'm going to say da 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 da? He goes ahead and makes a smart aleck remark before it. Then he says the phrase, and then they're like, oh, so see, he said it. Even though that's dishonest as can be, because they know that that's not the context he said it in. And context is everything. Because you can say something and not mean it in the way somebody's pushing out because of the context, and they love to take him out of context. Now, don't get me wrong, he helps himself with that by backing himself in their corner or not always saying what he feels, what he believes, being honest, being truthful, not hiding and coming up with the political, being a politician and literally repeating the same answer for 5 different questions and just going back to the same simple answer for 5 different questions. He's not that type of person. And that's why people voted for him, because they were tired of these politicians sitting there and giving you this half true stuff or not even saying anything. If you look at any president who has done interviews, Trump is the most accessible, transparent president we have had in history. There is no other president has done as many press briefs or press interviews as he has done. There's just not. You can't find it anywhere. But I had a little short of a this is going to be a little shorter than usual. I usually try to do 45 minutes to an hour, but I just got my teleprompter finally, so I wanted to get it set up and give it a try, get the scripts put up in it, and I didn't quite have a full 45 minutes to an hour worth of script put together. So please, if you like what you've heard, share, follow, like, let everybody know. I'm going to try to start being on here once a week on the same day, probably be Wednesday evenings around 5 or 6 o'clock Central Time. And then possibly maybe Saturdays if I have enough time to do that, come up together with that many scripts. And also I do lives on TikTok at least 3 to 4 days a week. And if you look at the little banner going across the bottom of the screen, you can see my links to all that. Also, if you go to my link tree, and then you can also see them on my Rumble. My link tree has all that. Also, please go to my locals account and check it out. Most of the posts I have on there right now are open to everybody because I don't have enough subscribers yet. But I've created a locals community to do my subscriptions through for Rumble. As I start getting more subscribers, I will be able to start spending more time on this, creating better content, bringing you more content, being on here more days, doing also I'll take questions and replies and possibly even structure my shows to that content that you see, or maybe that you would like to have questions answered or anything like that. And then also once I start getting enough start monetizing where I can do this full time, I plan on to start doing segment series on like financial literacy, real estate development, stuff like that. So thank you for watching and listening, and I hope to see you again. And hopefully next time I'm on here, I'll have a little more activity with some more comments and get some conversations going.